Battle through the heavens. The little fairy doctor nodded when she heard him. She inhaled a deep breath of air and suppressed the anxiety in her heart. After which, she sat cross-legged on the altar. She straightened her upper body. Her long neck and narrow waist formed an alluring curve. Xiao Yan also sat down. He raised his head and looked at the countless lights that shot down from the sky. His hand gently caressed the empty air. Immediately, a warm feeling was emitted from his palm. He sensed a kind of pure light and heat in the sunlight. Not bad, Xiao Yan slightly praised. This was indeed a good place. Even if he did not do anything, this place would cause the little fairy doctor's woeful poison body to be naturally suppressed. Thus, they would be able to avoid the situation of having the woeful poison body erupt midway through, causing some unnecessary trouble. Xiao Yan's eyes slightly shifted. After which, they paused on the dark black stone tablet set in the altar. Yi Zhong had already mentioned that this stone tablet was the key to activating this altar. Xiao Yan's hands gently pushed the dark black stone tablet. A hot feeling surged from within. However, it did not cause Xiao Yan the slightest discomfort. He used a little strength and pushed the stone tablet aside amid a cracking sound. The stone tablet was slowly pushed aside and a head-sized dark black hole appeared in Xiao Yan's sight. It was likely that this was the hole that Yi Zhong had mentioned. Creak creak. Following the formation of the circular shape of the stone walls seemed to have gradually become smooth. An increasing amount of light rays were reflected by the mirror-like stone walls. Finally, they gathered at this hole in the ground. The bright, dazzling light was extremely glaring. Although the sunlight had gathered, not the slightest bit of fire seedlings were emitted from the hole in the ground. Hence, the so-called sun flame did not appear. Fortunately, the light and hot energy of this altar were becoming more intense with the gathering of the sunlight. In the end, the little fairy doctor's eyebrows were slightly vertical. This sunlight left a searing feeling when it landed on her body. Sizzle sizzle. Wave after wave of grayish-purple poison fog gradually surged out of the little fairy doctor beyond her control. After which, they collided with the hot sunlight in the outside world and emitted a sizzling sound. There is no need to panic. Xiao Yan comforted her and smiled as he looked at the little fairy doctor, who had her hands clenched. He waved his hand and a crystal that was filled with a wild and violent energy appeared in front of him. It was the monster core of the sky-poisoned dragon-scorpion beast. Xiao Yan flipped his hand after taking out the monster core. A jade box appeared in it. The jade box was snow-white in color. There was a faint cold air seeping out of it. A jade-green color as well as a sticky substance, that was still wiggling, appeared in Xiao Yan's eyes. The Bodhisattva body transformation saliva. Xiao Yan had spent a great amount of effort in order to obtain this unique treasure. It was one of the key ingredients for the so-called poison Dan method. The little fairy doctor clenched her silver teeth as she looked at Xiao Yan's grave expression. She gently nodded. She knew that Xiao Yan had spent a couple years of effort in order to help her resolve this woeful poison body. Now that they had everything ready, she would definitely endure regardless of how painful it would be. Otherwise, how could she be worthy of the effort that this person in front of her had put in over the years? I will need to undo the seal within your body and completely unleash the woeful poison body. Xiao Yan inhaled a deep breath. His hand involuntarily trembled a little. Should he fail to suppress the woeful poison body, it was likely that the little fairy doctor would die on the spot. I trust you. The little fairy doctor appeared to be aware of the worry in Xiao Yan's heart after seeing his somewhat trembling hands. An alluring smile surfaced on her pretty face as she softly uttered encouraging words. Xiao Yan slowly tightened his hand. His voice was deep, I have already prepared for today for many years, and I will definitely not make a mistake. Remove your clothes. I will begin undoing the seal. Xiao Yan's expression was serious. His mind was the most focused it had ever been as he commanded in a deep voice. The little fairy doctor was startled when she heard his command. A redness swiftly flew onto her pretty face. However, when she saw Xiao Yan's expression, which was so solemn to the point it did not possess any other emotion, she gently clenched her silver teeth. In any case, this fellow had already seen her many times. She did not mind allowing him to see her another time. The little fairy doctor gently removed her clothes while possessing this thought that caused her face to redden. After which, her dress fell past her lovely, white, smooth skin. A suet jade-like, perfect figure was exposed under this hot sunlight. Xiao Yan curled his fingers. A jade-green flame formed over his fingertip. His eyes focused as his hand swung at a lightning-like speed. After which, it heavily pressed on the little fairy doctor's smooth abdomen. A sizzling white smoke was emitted. The faint red scar, that spread all over her body, slowly began to wiggle under his finger. The scar swiftly paled. Wave after wave of frightening deep grayish poison fog erupted from the little fairy doctor's body after this symbol swiftly paled. Her grayish-purple eyes gradually turned pure gray. This kind of grayish color contained the scent of death. It was without even the slightest bit of life. At a glance, one would feel a fluttering feeling that seemed to have spread from deep within their soul. When the woeful poison body completely erupted, this kind of grayish color would swiftly devour all of the life force belonging to its owner. The bright redness on the little fairy doctor's face swiftly vanished following the spread of this grayish-colored poison fog. Her originally gentle face slowly became expressionless. However, the pain and struggle that faintly seeped from between her eyebrows indicated that she was resisting the backlash of the woeful poison body. They were both pressed for time. A thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind as a jade-green flame was spat out of his mouth. The dark black ring on his finger gradually trembled. A dense white-colored flame slowly curled and rose. Xiao Yan grabbed this cluster of dense white flames. He stuffed it into his jade-green flame. The three types of flames underwent a drastic change the moment they made contact. However, Xiao Yan had already mastered this kind of change. He spent a short moment before he completely merged the three types of flames. The final creation from the merger of the three types of heavenly flames was a pure green-white flame. It slowly rose while waves of destructive strength slowly spread from it. Sizzle, 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 sizzle. The flame had just covered the little fairy doctor when the dense, gray-colored poison gas around her body emitted an intense sizzling sound, as though it had met its nemesis. After which, it withdrew with lightning-like speed, fleeing back into the little fairy doctor's body. Qi. The little fairy doctor's grayish-purple eyes immediately turned a pure gray color when the poison gas entered her body. A deadly aura radiated out of her. The little fairy doctor's body moved and charged out of this altar. However, Xiao Yan was already prepared for this. The little fairy doctor's body had just moved when he suddenly stood up. His hand was covered in a green-white flame as it pressed onto the little fairy doctor's shoulder, violently holding her down in the process. Gather. The seal formed by Xiao Yan's hand changed as he furiously cried out. The green-white flame transformed into countless numbers of tiny fire seedlings after the cry sounded. They penetrated the little fairy doctor's skin and entered her body. Finally, they wildly chased after the gray-colored poison gas. The green-white fire seedlings from all directions covered every corner of the little fairy doctor's body. Fortunately, Xiao Yan's current strength was much stronger than before. Otherwise, it was likely that he would have found it difficult to control so many fire seedlings. The permeating gray poison gas began to swiftly scatter after being chased by the fire seedlings. Moreover, under the control of Xiao Yan's mind, all of the poison gas gathered in the little fairy doctor's lower abdomen. Hiss 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 hiss. The vast, mighty poison gas, that was filled with a deadly aura, gathered in the little fairy doctor's lower abdomen. At a glance, it looked like a swirl. The interior of the swirl was a deadly world. Even an elite Dou Zun would not dare to easily face such a frightening poison gas head-on. If Xiao Yan had not been relying on the strength of 3 types of heavenly flames, he would have been eroded by this kind of poison gas into nothing with just the first contact. There was no need to even talk about driving it away. Gathering the poison gas, replacing it with the monster core, and using the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva to. Xiao Yan softly sighed after sensing the poison gas that had gathered together. He suddenly grabbed the sky poison dragon scorpion beast's crystal monster core, and he placed it on the little fairy doctor's lower abdomen. The crystal had just made contact with the little fairy doctor's skin when she strangely emitted an unusual glow. After which, the crystal slowly merged with her skin. The monster core was strangely swallowed by the little fairy doctor's skin, soon entering the swirl of grey poison gas. After which, it lingered in the middle of the swirl. Xiao Yan's expression became graver after the successful insertion of the monster core. His eyes slid to the jade box beside him, where the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva was located. The next step was the most important one. Xiao Yan's hand slightly curled. A suction force pulled the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva from the jade box into his hand. His eyes coagulated. A green-white flame separated from the surface of the little fairy doctor's body. After which, it wrapped around the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva. When the flame made contact with the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva, it immediately began to writhe as though it had been provoked. From the looks of it, it seemed that it intended to escape the flame. Xiao Yan would not allow such a situation to occur. The Bodhisattva body transformation saliva might possess a unique effect, but it needed to undergo a slight refinement by the heavenly flame before it could be used on the little fairy doctor's body. The green-white flame churned even more intensely. He slightly clenched his hand. Under this frightening temperature, the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva lasted 2 to 3 minutes before it gradually ceased wiggling. Xiao Yan removed the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva from the flame after the refinement was completed. However, he was surprised to see that the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva had gradually revealed many emerald green, dust-like particles. In the blink of an eye, they formed an emerald green bead the size of a palm. The Bodhisattva body transformation saliva slightly trembled the instant the emerald green bead was formed. Immediately, this bead fell and was grabbed by Xiao Yan's hand. This emerald green bead was not smooth. Instead, it felt a little rough. However, one could sense a thriving life force when one held it in one's hands. This is Bodhisattva seed. Xiao Yan's eyes revealed his surprise as he looked at the emerald green bead that had appeared in his hand for no reason. A moment later, his eyes focused as he exclaimed. The Bodhisattva seed, like the Bodhisattva heart, was something that originated from the Bodhisattva ancient tree. However, this kind of rare item was just as rare as the Bodhisattva heart. Normally, it would transform into powder in an instant after falling from the Bodhisattva ancient tree. It was extremely difficult for an outsider to obtain. The precipitation within the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva can actually form the Bodhisattva seed? Xiao Yan's eyes flashed quickly as he suddenly came to an understanding. The legend says that one would be able to sense the existence of the Bodhisattva heart by obtaining the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva was indeed true. However, the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva in the legend should mean the Bodhisattva seed. Only by obtaining the Bodhisattva seed would one obtain the chance to sense the legendary Bodhisattva heart. Xiao Yan slowly clenched his hand. A joy flashed through his eyes. He did not expect this unintentional consequence would enable him to obtain this unique item. A divine item like the Bodhisattva heart possessed an allure that could not be matched by an elite Dou Zun because the Bodhisattva heart could raise the chances of success while one was advancing to the Dou Qi class. Just this point alone was enough to cause every elite Dou Zun to pounce on it like a moth attracted to fire. After storing away the Bodhisattva seed, Xiao Yan's eyes swiftly looked back at the little fairy doctor in front of him, whose body was trembling while her eyes were tightly shut. Subsequently, he grabbed the emerald green Bodhisattva body transformation saliva from the flame. He inhaled a deep breath of air and pressed it against the little fairy doctor's smooth lower abdomen. The Bodhisattva body transformation saliva had just made contact with the little fairy doctor's body when it emitted a squeaking sound. It found her pores and quietly entered her body. An emerald green color, that was filled with life, immediately spread from the little fairy doctor's lower abdomen after the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva entered it. Within a couple of breaths, it completely circulated around the little fairy doctor's body. An emerald green liquid adhered on every corner of the little fairy doctor's body. Upon the invasion of this Bodhisattva body transformation saliva, her veins and muscles, that had lost some life because of the poison air, once again began to radiate with life. The density of the life force being emitted was even greater than it had been before. It is indeed worthy of being the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva. Joy flashed across Xiao Yan's face as he sensed the life force swiftly radiating from the little fairy doctor's body. The effectiveness of the Bodhisattva body transformation saliva had exceeded his expectations. Next will be to resolve the strength of the woeful poison. Xiao Yan's expression once again turned grave. He curled two of his fingers and swiftly pressed them against the little fairy doctor's lower abdomen. Following the arrival of his fingers, the green-white flame, surrounding the grayish swirl, immediately split apart, forming a small opening. Wave after wave of emerald green liquid swiftly entered through the gap. Finally, it carried a slight gurgling sound as it charged into the gray poison swirl. Little fairy doctor, circulate your Dou Qi and suppress the poison gas. Turn it into a poison dan. Xiao Yan immediately let out a stern cry after sensing the swiftly disappearing deadly aura. The cry was just like thunder as it rumbled to the deepest parts of the little fairy doctor's soul. The little fairy doctor's soul recovered some consciousness after this cry from Xiao Yan. After which, she hurriedly circulated her Dou Qi and followed the method that was described by the poison dan method from back then. She gradually began to suppress the mighty poison gas. Under the little fairy doctor's control, this poison gas spiral began to head to the monster core located at the middle. The monster core began to emit a wild, violent energy in the face of the poison gas in an attempt to resist the erosion. Boom! This kind of poison gas and wild energy collision did not last long before it suddenly unleashed a wave of deep muffled sounds. The energy within the monster core was swiftly swallowed and occupied by the woeful poison vapor. Along with the erosion of this poison gas, the monster core began to turn round, and the crystal started to emit a gray luster. The gray-colored poison gas spiral continued to rotate at a rapid speed. Mighty woeful poison gas surged unceasingly into the round monster core. As more Dou Qi surged into it, the size of that monster core shrank at a slow pace. Thank the heavens! It had been many years since he had made his promise to the little fairy doctor. Now, he had finally fulfilled it. While Xiao Yan was resolving the woeful poison body's problem for the little fairy doctor, there was a cold aura spreading within a large hall located deep within an icy region far from Yi City. You left with 54 people, yet you are the only one who has returned. Tian Shi, is this the accountability that you have brought back? A white-robed figure was seated on an ice-cold throne in an ice-cold hall. A pair of emotionless eyes glanced at the old man creeping on the ground within the hall. His calm voice, however, caused the coldness within the hall to soar. "Valley Chief, this entire matter is not related to this subordinate. All of it is because there is a mistake in the report. There is an elite Dou Zun in that group. This subordinate can be considered lucky to have managed to escape and return this time around." The old man on the ground of the hall raised his head. He was surprisingly elder Tian Shi, who had escaped from the hands of Tian Huazunjia. "Dou Zun? How many star Dou Zun?" A ripple appeared in the eyes of the human figure on the ice-cold throne when he heard this. He should only be a one-star Dou Zun. Otherwise, this subordinate would not have been able to escape from his hands. Tian Shi hesitated for a moment before respectfully replying. "Cuckoo, no wonder he is able to turn Tian Shi into such a miserable state. He is a one-star Dou Zun." An elderly voice suddenly sounded. If one were to follow the voice and look over, one would see another old man in a white leather outfit located in a corner of the hall. A smile was hung on this old man's face. He did not possess the respect an ordinary person would show when mentioning a Dou Zun. "Only one star, huh?" The human figure on the ice-cold throne slightly nodded. His finger gently pressed on his large armrest. A moment later, he spoke in a faint voice, "This venerable self must obtain the woeful poison body. If it's a one-star Dou Zun, he does not possess the qualification to get this venerable self to give up. Do you know where that group headed to?" Tian Shi shook his head with some embarrassment when he heard his question. He hardly had the time to flee. Where would he find the time to bother about the whereabouts of those fellows? The human figure on the ice throne frowned when he saw Tian Shi shake his head. A chill, that caused one's heart to palpitate, slowly permeated the hall. Tian Shi trembled under this frightening chill that would even cause Dou Qi to freeze. "Tsk, Bing Zunjia, there is no need to get angry. We are aware of where that group of people is." A strange black vapor suddenly appeared within the hall while a coldness spread. Immediately, the black fog gathered, transforming into a human figure. The black fog wiggled and a faint metallic clanging sound was emitted from within. "Hall of Souls. You have actually come to my Ice River Valley, what rare guests." The appearance of the black fog did not cause the human figure on the icy cold throne to feel even the least bit surprised. He simply spoke in an indifferent manner. "Tsk, there is someone within that group who is a target of our Hall of Souls. Since we have similar motive, we might be able to join hands together this time around. What does Bing Zunjia think?" A strange laugh was emitted from the wiggling black fog. "The woeful poison body belongs to my Ice River Valley. We will leave the others to you." The human figure on the ice-cold throne slowly stood up. A frightening air seemed to have been spat out of his breath, transforming into a cold stream that spread apart. He spoke these words softly after glancing at the figure made of black fog. "You are indeed worthy of being Bing Zunjia. This boldness is something that an ordinary person has difficulty matching. Tsk, in that case, I hope that we will cooperate well." Their hearts would start beating even quicker when their eyes moved over the two black-clothed, old men, who were the leaders. They caused the space around them to distort by simply standing there. The entire area had become quiet as their vast, mighty auras spread, causing quite a number of self-proclaimed experts to tremble. These black figures did not leave immediately after landing on the ground because the space once again became distorted soon after they landed. When the space became distorted, the many black figures, with the exception of the two leading old men, emitted a swish sound. They knelt to the distorted space with one knee on the ground in front of many shocked eyes. There was a respect that came from their hearts appearing in their eyes. Numerous dull gazes slowly turned to the distorted space. Expert Dou Zongs knelt and welcomed while elite Dou Zuns lowered their heads. This terrifying lineup was something they had seen for the first time in all these years. They really wanted to know which damn, ultimate authority possessed such greatness. It was likely that even the 3 valleys and 2 sects didn't possess such an ability. The fluctuating space slowly came to a stop in front of many people's unblinking eyes. Immediately, a delicate figure slowly appeared in the distorted space. After which, she lifted her leg gently and strode through the space, appearing in this sunny area. The delicate-looking green-clothed lady gently placed her foot on the empty ground while the entire place was silent. Her alluring, exquisite face was gently raised. She looked in the direction of the distant Yi city. Immediately, she revealed a smile. A smile that could ruin a city. Xiao Yan Gge. With Sun air around, anyone who dares to touch you, I will kill them. Numerous rays of light scattered down from the sky onto the ancient altar. Finally, they entered the interior of the altar, as though it had a true form, bringing about wave after wave of warmth. Xiao Yan sat cross-legged under the many intersecting light rays. He glanced at the little fairy doctor in front of him. There was no longer even the faintest bit of poison vapor being emitted from the surface of her body. Her skin, that had originally been a pale white because of the woeful poison body, had once again emitted healthy, sleek, red color. Clearly, this body of hers, that had been destroyed by the poison over many years, had once again been revitalized. Xiao Yan's eyes swept around before they paused on the little fairy doctor's smooth lower abdomen. At this moment, a surging energy was located at that spot. Moreover, this energy was continuously shrinking to that spot at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the face of this shrinking, the little fairy doctor's naked body appeared like warm jade as it slowly emitted a faint luster. Looking from a distance, she appeared just like a fairy in the sky, giving her a holy feeling. Xiao Yan's eyes swept around some more before being lowered. An ordinary person was unable to imagine just how difficult it was to resist this allure when it was spread at an unexpected time. It was just like a goddess in one's heart suddenly revealing an enchanting appearance in front of oneself. It was just like a charm being suddenly unleashed. After completing this safety precaution, Xiao Yan finally let out a sigh of relief. His eyes wandered in all directions. The light being reflected from the smooth stone walls caused him to narrow his eyes. By sitting within this altar, it appeared as though he was in a world of sunlight. It seemed as if this altar was another bright sun surrounding them. Currently, the interior of the little fairy doctor's body could be considered to have entered an orderly state. As long as she compressed the woeful poison vapor into the monster core, she would be able to successfully form the poison dam. This process was something Xiao Yan was unable to help with. All she could do was rely on her own strength. Although there was nothing left for Xiao Yan to do in this place, it was naturally not possible for him to leave now. He needed to wait until the little fairy doctor completely formed the poison dam before he could relax. After all, this poison dam method was something that he had no experience with. Xiao Yan sat on the ground. He extended both of his hands in a bored manner and lazily stretched his waist. He shifted his eyes and suddenly stopped them on the bottomless hole within the altar. Xiao Yan blinked his eyes. He hesitated for a moment before shifting his body, carefully moving to the side of the hole in the ground. His gaze drifted into it, only to see an endless darkness. Other than its creator, it was likely that no one knew just where this hole led. The fire affinity energy inside is indeed extremely dense. Xiao Yan fondled his chin. He was unclear of why this hole no longer emitted the core fire seedlings. However, he was indeed a little interested in this thing. Of course, one should say that he was interested in the sun flame of this altar. After musing for a moment, Xiao Yan's hand gently pressed against the hole in the ground. He let out a soft cry and a suction force surged out of his hand. Following the surging of this suction force, a great amount of fire affinity energy was pulled up. Finally, it scattered. However, the so-called core fire seedling did not appear. Xiao Yan frowned when he saw this. He immediately let out a cold laugh. He did not believe that he was unable to pull out even a little core fire seedling. Xiao Yan resolved himself. He suddenly increased the suction force and wave after wave of dense fire affinity energy was continuously emitted from the hole in the ground. However, the so-called core fire seedling still did not show itself. This kind of crazy suction force continued for over 10 minutes. Just when Xiao Yan was feeling somewhat helpless, a thought suddenly passed through his heart. His hand quickly shifted aside. After his hand was shifted aside, a wisp of an extremely tiny, blood-red fire seedling fled the hole in the ground with lightning-like speed. This wisp of fiery red fire seedling had just escaped when it made contact with the light rays above. Immediately, a ripple was formed between the two. One could hear a puff sound as a wave of extremely warm white-colored flame appeared out of nowhere in front of Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan was surprised as he looked at the flame in front of him. The flame was pure white in color, but its interior was filled with countless vein-like blood threads. It was as though they were the blood vessels of this flame, covering its body. This is the sun flame. I wonder if this sun flame can nourish my flame creation skill. A thought suddenly passed through Xiao Yan's mind when he looked at this white flame. Currently, the life transformation flame was only in an embryonic form. It was far from sufficient for him to use it to form the extermination fire lotus. If this sun flame can also be turned into nourishment for the life transformation flame like other beasts' flames, he would have gained something for nothing. Xiao Yan did not hesitate even a little as this thought flashed across his heart. He clenched his hand and absorbed the sun flame into his body. After which, the glazed lotus heart flame surged out and easily refined it. Following which, the flame was merged with the tiny life transformation flame in his body. It is indeed effective. When the sun flame merged with the fire seed, Xiao Yan could clearly sense the fire seed significantly expand. This kind of swelling was far greater than when he absorbed some ordinary beast flames. A joy flashed across Xiao Yan's heart when he sensed the unique effect of this sun flame. This sun flame was not as difficult to tame as a beast flame. It was also extremely easy to refine it. If there was a large amount of it, it would be possible to cultivate this life-transforming fire seed. Upon thinking about how his extermination fire lotus would have enough resources to be unleashed without worry after the strengthening of this life-transforming flame, Xiao Yan's heart suddenly became fiery hot. His eyes suddenly turned to the hole in the ground in front of him as he laughed. He once again extended his hand and a suction force suddenly appeared. This suction continued for over 20 minutes before the wisp of a tiny blood-colored fire seed sprang out of the hole in the ground. It was swallowed by Xiao Yan after it merged with the sunlight and formed the sun flame. Has it really been sucked empty? Xiao Yan rubbed the perspiration on his forehead. He frowned and looked at the hole in the ground, which was void of any activity, before muttering to himself. Xiao Yan knit his brows and mused for a moment. After which, he suddenly shut his eyes, and a majestic spiritual strength slowly spread from between his brows. Finally, it transformed into a tiny wisp as it entered the hole in a lightning-like fashion. Xiao Yan's spiritual strength immediately sensed a great heat after entering the hole in the ground. Even though his spiritual strength was protected by the heavenly flame, he still felt a slight giddiness. Xiao Yan's heart became cold as he sensed this giddiness. There was such a dense fire poison within the deep parts of this hole. Moreover, this kind of fire poison was even able to erode one's soul. Just when Xiao Yan was hesitant about withdrawing his spiritual strength, a red light suddenly flickered in the deepest regions of the dark black hole. Ha! The flickering red light was sensed by Xiao Yan. Immediately, he let out a surprised cry. He hesitated for a moment before maneuvering his spiritual strength. He rushed over to the place where the red glow was flickering. The shuttling speed of the spiritual strength was extremely fast. A moment later, the red glow appeared in front of Xiao Yan's spiritual sight. The red glow was emitted from a cluster of some unknown, sticky, blood-red liquid. This liquid was circular in shape and its size coincidentally sealed off the bottom of the hole. What a shocking fire affinity energy! Xiao Yan inhaled a breath of air the moment his gaze landed on the sticky, blood-red liquid. This sticky, solid-like liquid had been formed from countless amounts of pure fire affinity energy. No wonder this ground hole no longer produces any core fire seedlings. They have all been blocked at this spot. Xiao Yan mused for a moment before finally deciding not to bother with it. Just when he was about to turn around and leave, however, he suddenly glanced over a red-colored light glow flickering within the red-colored liquid. This is... Xiao Yan's soul turned its eyes toward that red-colored glow, only to see that there was a thumb-sized, round, red bead suspended within the sticky blood-colored liquid. The blood-red bead might not be big, but at a glance, it appeared just like a fire bead with a flame burning above it. Its outer appearance was exceptionally mysterious. Xiao Yan's spiritual gaze was startled as he looked at the blood-red bead. A moment later, he finally inhaled a deep breath. Core bead.